Hello and welcome to our 150th episode. John, we have recorded 150 episodes of the Cine-Files.
Mind-blowing. And that means over 3 years of material.
Yeah.
It's hard to believe we've been doing this for 3 years.
I know, it's crazy.
Right?
It's funny, when we set out, you and I kind of talked of like, we want to be the definitive, discussion about great films.
Yeah.
And now we haven't talked about 150 films. We've probably talked well over 100.
Certainly.
I feel like on the one hand, man, we've covered a lot of ground. And on the other hand, we got a whole lot more to cover.
Yeah.
Like every day we get emails of why haven't you done this and why haven't you done this? It's like, man, we're going to have to do a lot more of these episodes.
This is like when you're working out and you finish the first 2 rounds and he goes, your trainer goes, oh no, this is just the warm-up.
This is the warm-up.
What do you mean this is the warm-up? I am already exhausted. But yeah, there are so many great films we still have to cover. We still haven't touched The Godfather, which we get constant requests for, and we will.
And much like Hitchcock, it's not like we didn't want to do The Godfather. We're ready to do it.
I think that's where our propensity to be very proprietary about our love of certain movies and want it to be done right supersedes the fans' desire at times for us to get to it. Because when we do get to it, I think all of you can attest who are listening, we do a really great job of bringing that film to life and do thorough research.
My guess is Godfather will happen within the next year.
Sure.
It's definitely one we've talked about over and over again. There are a bunch of other ones we certainly keep talking. There's a couple of guests we've tried to schedule for movies that are really important movies. It's like the scheduling fell through. It's like we got to start over. So, there's definitely some good stuff coming.
Absolutely.
But 150 in, it's been a long time.
It has been.
And of course, as we did on our 100th episode, we decided to open this up to a Q&A.
Yeah.
And so we asked for questions from all our listeners. We got a whole bunch of them. Some people wrote some epic long questions,
which I appreciate. Yeah. This is great.
And our first one comes from Jonathan Peck. And Jonathan Peck writes, Dear John and Steve, I've been a fan of the show since last year when I started binging the podcast. Thank you. It's an excellent thing to binge. Please don't purge it. That gets very messy. My question is this. What is your favorite ensemble in movies ever? My choices will be Avengers, Endgame, JFK, Inception, Goodfellas, The Godfather, and Boogie Nights. Boogie Nights would be one of mine.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for the amazing content. Sincerely, Jonathan Peck from Alexandria, Virginia. And he's got a PS here too. Thank you for the shout out and Back to the Future episode back in March. And I hope someday you will talk about non-Disney Pixar animated films in future episodes.
Oh.
There are several that I think are really good. And
Absolutely.
We will definitely do that.
We should.
Movie ensembles, John.
That's a tough one, man. There's so many that jump to mind. Breakfast Club, which we did recently, I think.
That was what I was just going to say.
Yeah, I think that's one that certainly is at the forefront of my mind all the time. Having just seen Blinded by the Light at an early press screening, the director of the film, who also directed Bend It Like Beckham, she purposely included an homage to John Hughes' Breakfast Club during a musical sequence in the movie. And so that made it put it all back in my head again. I think Pulp Fiction is a fantastic ensemble.
You're like, why are you taking my answers? I was going to say Reservoir Dogs too.
Okay, yeah, Reservoir Dogs is fantastic. Ocean's 11, the remake.
Oh yeah,
that's a great and 13. 11 and 13 are fantastic ensemble movies that I love to pieces.
God, you took a whole bunch of mine.
I'm sorry.
The Big Chill is one of the classic sort of ensembles, and Silverado, a movie that we've talked about doing lately, is just a fantastic ensemble. I was trying to think of ones where everyone kind of has their moment.
12 Angry Men.
Ooh, another one. One of my favorite of our early episodes.
Agreed.
I think.
Agreed.
And of course, we got The Right Stuff.
Yes.
And may I give you Armageddon?
Oh, yes, a very well constructed ensemble. Magnificent Seven.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Well, then we have to say The Seven Samurai.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Fantastic ensemble there. Even though none of us, we couldn't name maybe past 2 or 3 of them, they're still a fantastic ensemble.
Yeah. I don't have to name them to like them. I don't remember names very well anyway.
What about The Dirty Dozen?
Oh, great one.
Yeah, right.
Well, and then The Great Escape.
Yes, Great Escape.
That one
I need to revisit that. I know.
I have a feeling you don't love it. You don't love it as much.
I don't find myself drawn to it. But there's a sequence, and there's no spoilers. But there's a sequence in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood that I saw recently that evokes that, and it made me want to revisit it. So when we're ready to do it on the Cine-Files, I'm excited to revisit it for the Cine-Files.
So not only am I ready to do it, But I have I listen to Audible obsessively.
Sure.
And Audible has sales. And every once in a while a book will come up and it's $3 and I'll just go, well, I'm interested in that. Mm-hmm. And I bought one and I can't listen to it because it is the true story behind The Great Escape. And I decided I'm not going to listen to it until it's right before we record the episode because otherwise I'd have to listen to it twice. So I have it. It's sitting on my phone, ready to listen to. Anytime you say you want to do The Great Escape, I will listen to the book and
done
be
and
prepared.
done.
All right.
And done. I think Bridesmaids is another one too, just to kind of balance the scales a little bit.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah.
You want to do the next question?
Yeah, definitely. Let's see here. That was Jonathan Peck. Thank you, Jonathan. Rodrigo Pichardo. I hope I'm saying that right. Hi, Steve and John. This guy has a young Marlon Brando as his profile pic. I love that. I'm a loyal fan and Patreon supporter. Thank you, Rodrigo, who's always wanted to ask you guys a question. I know in many episodes there's been talk about certain films being in your top 5, in your number 2 slot, or absolutely without a doubt being your number 1. But over the years, it's all become a blur to me. Since there's quite some time until your 150th episode, I was hoping you both can give it some serious thought. What is your top 10 favorite films of all time?
It's not going to happen for me. I'll never come up with it. But
this is a question I ask people regularly, sometimes when I first meet them or after some time has gone by. I feel something can be said about a person once you know this detail. It's very telling, and I also use it as a helpful guide to see a film that perhaps I've heard of but never seen. Since it's so important to this person, I'll automatically push up to the top of my watch list. These are your favorites for whatever reason it may be, whether it's nostalgia, sentimental reasons, makes you happy, cheers you up, or whatever. You have to be able to look at this list and say, yep, this is me. These are my absolute favorite movies. Thank you both again for this wonderful podcast. Sincerely, Rodrigo.
Well, the ones that I always can come up with is my favorite, I always say, is Lawrence of Arabia.
Sure.
And Citizen Kane is right up in there, in the top 2, and with probably Godfather also being there. But I'll give you an interesting, different list.
Sure.
Movies that I reference the most as an instructor in film school.
Oh, that's good.
The number 1 is Jaws.
Oh, yeah.
I bring out Jaws to talk about music, to talk about character development, to talk about shot selection, a whole bunch of reasons I bring out scenes from Jaws. Die Hard I bring out all the time. Godfather I bring out. Rear Window sometimes. Those are the ones that come out a lot as I'm describing things in film school. Oh, and Dr. Strangelove is another one.
I wish I loved that film the way you love it. I wish I loved it. It's one of those things, right? You have the film that you...
We just recorded one where it's one of your all-time favorites.
Yeah.
Everyone's already listened to it, which is Last of the Mohicans.
Last of the Mohicans.
Which is one of your all-time favorites, and I understand what's really good in it.
Yeah.
Don't love the movie.
Stay alive. For me, it's tough because I have a top 10 show, and Matt and I have saved that for a possible live show down the road somewhere.
Top 10 in maybe Carnegie Hall.
Yeah, possibly in Carnegie Hall, or if we get that 400-seater in London at that the massive music concert hall, we'll do it there. But I will say this, like Steve, I'll give you my top 10, or I'll give you some of my top 10 favorite films versus my top 10 films of all time. There are some that cross over. Certainly Lawrence of Arabia crosses over. Godfather Part II crosses over. Seven Samurai crosses over. But I'll throw Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind in there. That's one of my top 10 favorite films. I'll throw in Jaws. Absolutely. I love Jaws 2 pieces. Let's see. What else can we do? What else? Citizen Kane certainly crosses over. Yeah, I think those are good for right now. Anything more might get me in a bit of trouble as we go down the road. But some of my closet favorites are Major League. That's one of my and Armageddon.
So that's one. By the way, I was about to write because we talked about Major League when we did with Kay Cannon when we did League of Their Own. I was going to write Kay to see if we could schedule Major League soon.
I'll be down.
I know you are.
I love Major League.
This is from Sean Ogren. A question for the 150th episode, Monopoly of Streaming Services. I don't know what Monopoly of Streaming Services means.
We'll find out.
Hi, John and Steve. My wife, my 12-year-old son, and I are big film lovers and have gotten hooked on your show. Well, thank you to the whole family.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for instilling even more love in us for the movies. Also, my wife and I are grads of FSU Theater, 96, and love hearing stories about your times there, John. Go Seminoles.
Go Noles.
All right. My question is this. On your recent episode with Scott Mance, you got to talking about the power of streaming services. That's what this relates to. And how the upcoming Disney service is going to be a game changer. Do you feel there is a correlation between the streaming studios with their home distributions and what the studios had back in the 30s and 40s when they owned their own movie theaters? And do you see a possible breakup of their power as happened to the studio system? This is a very learned question.
Agreed.
Part of me thinks this could and should happen, but I would hate to see the departure of the great smaller films they are putting out, which the modern studios are not. Thanks for considering my question, and please keep having fun on your podcast. Sean.
Do I feel there's a correlation between the streaming studios with their home and what the studios had back in 30s and 40s when they owned their own movie theaters? Yeah, I think I'm not sure, because the streaming services are able to put out movies from multiple studios and multiple genres, whereas those theaters were owned by those studios, so only those studios' films were allowed to be in those theaters. So I would say there's more choice in the Netflix situation versus in the theater. You can actually go and see multiple movies at the same time, versus in the old days you could only see the movies when they put them out, and only the movies that particular studio did in that theater. Do you think the possible breakup of their power has happened to the studio? See a possible breakup of their powers that happened in the studio system? Maybe, but I think we're, as I've said many times on numerous podcasts and shows, I think we're moving to the place where movies become an event like a Broadway show versus what we see now.
It's a really good question. I think they're similar and different. Like, for me, what's similar is that we're definitely seeing the consolidation of power in a specific way, particularly with a company like Disney. That's very, very obvious. And anytime there's a huge consolidation of power, then I definitely become concerned that independent voices are less likely to be heard, and that other different companies will have trouble competing in those spheres. And do I think that means we're going to head to a breakup? Probably not. And the reason is because you have hugely powerful companies, Netflix being one, but now we have Disney and Apple and Google and all these other companies with massive bankrolls all fighting against each other. So the argument for a monopoly isn't as likely. The other thing that I think is different is that in the studio system, the heads of the studios really controlled exactly what the content was. Yeah. Whereas that was broken up because of the rise of the power of actors and the power of agencies, and now it's not like there's a Louis B. Mayer who is in control and an Irving Thalberg in control of everything that gets made on the studio. What they're doing is they're hiring production companies that are doing those things. You know what I mean? For most of the projects. So there's still a level of independence that I would say is different. But, anytime we get huge consolidation of power, I always worry that there's going to be a negative consequence to it.
Yeah, that's why I think the streaming services were born out of a necessity to have these other smaller, independent, more mature films, more mature themes films that no longer have the taste levels that they used to have. Like, the audience used to have a higher taste level for them. I don't think they have them at that level in the theater anymore. They can enjoy them at their homes.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
John, you want to get the next one?
Yeah. This is a Cine-Files from Kevin Williams, I believe. If you don't feel like reading all of this email, I totally understand. I wanted to give you a question right up top that I thought would be fun to answer. Oh, this is a massively long email. My Lord. If you could have any guest for the show, living, dead, or fictional, who would it be, why, and what movie do you think they would pick? Let me try to read some of his email because it's long. Hey, John and Steve, congratulations on 150 episodes. This is by far my favorite podcast. Thank you.
Thank you.
The depth of film analysis paired with the entertainment of your banter make it something I look forward to every week.
We do have nice banter.
We do. I've learned so much about my favorite films, and I've also watched films I wouldn't have otherwise watched just so I can hear another episode of your show. I watched Chaplin's Modern Times thinking it would be a task to get through since I had never seen a mostly silent film before and was shocked at how much I enjoyed it. I have now seen nearly all of Chaplin's feature-length films. Wow.
That's great.
We should get some credit for that. As well as the RDJ film due to an obsession that grew all because of the Cine-Files. With this in mind, I was wondering if there was a film or even a film genre that you begrudgingly watched because of a recommendation that you surprisingly love so much that it made you want to consume anything similar. Thank you so much for all your hard work. I know putting this show out on a weekly basis can be time-consuming, especially with the seamless editing in every episode. Thanks to Steve.
Thank you.
That feature of the show makes me feel I am enjoying the movie right along with you. I've listened to your Big Lebowski episode several times because of this. Finally, I wanted to give you a list of additional questions. We're not going to answer any of those. Sorry for the long email, but when I heard you were doing this special, I put a lot of thought into the questions and what I wanted to say. The Cine-Files means a lot to me, and I didn't want to miss the chance to pick your brains. Thanks again. I forgot to say my name. It's Kevin Williams from Nashville, Tennessee, but originally from Virginia like John. Nice. All right, Steve, which one do you want to answer?
Let's see. I looked down on his other list of questions and says, Steve, what is your dream film to direct? I have several scripts of mine that I would like to direct. I have a sci-fi post-apocalyptic movie and an indie drama. So, Kevin, if you've got some funding and you want to pay for me to direct those films, I've been wanting to do them for a long time.
That's awesome.
If we could have any guest on the show, living or dead, there's such a long list.
Yeah.
One of the things we've talked about is like I want to get interesting people that are not necessarily film people. Mm-hmm. A lot of these are maybe out of our level, but Neil deGrasse Tyson, that would be a great guest on the show.
Sure.
Barack Obama, let's have him on the show.
Oh my God, it'd be great to have Barack Obama.
I mean, there's so many people who are intelligent and articulate, and also I happen to know are interested in pop culture that I would love to have those people on the phone. One of the ones who passed away, which was two food people that passed away, Anthony Bourdain and Jonathan Gold, who was the local film food critic in Los Angeles, and those would be just fascinating people to have on to talk about movies.
Yeah, agreed. I have a great Anthony Bourdain story I can tell you off mic, but for me, the number one choice is Welles. Orson Welles.
Absolutely.
There's no one else I would rather do a podcast with than Orson Welles in terms of having him on as a guest to talk about film, to banter with him, to get him upset, to fight, to agree with him, to have a great hearty laugh, and to hear his stories about these films that I so love and admire and revere.
Within the film world, Martin Scorsese would be like an unbelievable.
Sure. Absolutely.
I mean, the only thing is that you and I would just probably have to sit back because he would be able to tell you every single thing about these films because he analyzes them so minutely.
Yeah. But I'd like to go toe-to-toe with him.
Do you think we could handle having Quentin Tarantino on the show?
I think we could. We've had Mance on the show, for God's sakes. The energy is the same.
Fair point.
It's just, I would love to have Quentin on the show. It'd be great. He's fantastic.
John, is there a film or film genre that you begrudgingly watched because of a recommendation that you surprisingly loved so much that it made you want to consume something similar?
I don't know. I've gone into wormholes. Like Werner Herzog is a
That's
wormhole.
a weird wormhole.
So I would say that I saw a documentary on Werner Herzog in the early 2000s on IFC, back when IFC showed a bunch of film documentaries. It was called My Best Fiend, which is his film about being friends with Klaus Kinski and shooting him a number of films. I had never seen anything of his work, of Herzog's work, and then I found myself back when you could rent VHSs. I was renting Fitzcarraldo. I was renting Wojciech. I was renting Nosferatu, his remake, or Vampire, whatever it's called, his remake of Nosferatu. I consumed everything that Werner did, and then I subsequently have become a fan of his documentaries. I go and see every one of his documentaries in the theater, sometimes with our friend Jonathan Blue, a fellow Herzog fan. And so that's what I would say. Not genre necessarily, but certainly director in that way.
I certainly haven't discovered a genre. It's like, but there are definitely people. Like I remember when I had seen a few John Huston movies, but then when I started, I kind of went down the rabbit hole and I saw Night of the Iguana and I saw all these ones that I'd never heard of. I'm like, oh my God, John Huston. To me, he might be the most modern of the classic directors. Like he has such a almost 70s sensibility in his 50s films. So I definitely went down rabbit holes like that. There are other movies where like I didn't think Guardians of the Galaxy was going to be that good. Then I figured, it's going to be fun. And I went to it and it was like, oh my God, this is one of the great movies ever.
Agreed.
Yeah.
That's another good ensemble.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
This next one is from Carlin Canales, I believe. Question for 3 years. Hey, guys, so I recently listened to the Willy Wonka episode. I liked that episode a lot.
It was good. Yuri was great.
Yeah, he was great. We have to have him back on. I know
Absolutely.
We keep talking about it. And was surprised to find out that John had never seen the movie before. So that made me wonder, what is the one movie that people would be extremely surprised to hear that either of you haven't seen, and why haven't you seen it yet? Thanks for all your hard work. Love you guys. Well, thank you. So it's going to be easy to answer for me.
Okay.
All movies in the last 10 years, I probably haven't seen them.
What?
I mean, since my son was born, so it's 8 years.
Okay.
Like, I just have missed, like, there was a time where I had seen every Oscar nomination.
Right.
That's not true in the last 8 years.
You'd be in trouble in the Schmoedown.
Oh, no. That's why I get killed. So there's so many movies of the last eight or 9 years I haven't seen.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is a tougher one for me.
You see everything.
Yeah, I try to see everything. Although in the last year or so, it's been harder. Even though I work at Collider, it's been harder because of my workload here and the podcasts outside and having my girlfriend. Like, let me tell you something. My girlfriend coming into my life has been a blessing, but it also is at times difficult to go and see films because all I want to do is go home and hang out with my girl and watch stuff, her BBC stuff or her British stuff, because I just love being around her. And she says, like, you can go see movies, you can go do whatever, but it means time away from her. And I'm telling you, I just don't like taking time away from her. I love being around her.
I don't mind telling you, this might be a surprise. There is a limited number of hours in the day.
There really is.
This is time is a zero-sum game, and when you add a new element, you take away many hours. So like between having a kid and I'm married, and then the Cine-Files has made me dig deep on one film a week.
Yeah.
But that's if I spent 6 hours or 8 hours researching the film, well, that's 3 other movies I didn't watch. Probably,
Right. There are films I refuse to watch. Maybe I can answer it that way. I refuse to watch Out of Africa because it cost Color Purple an Oscar, and I refuse to watch How Green Was My Valley because it took that Oscar away from Citizen Kane, in my opinion.
Total reaction I would never, ever have. These are unrelated things. By the way, How Green Was My Valley is really good.
You tell me all the time, but I refuse to watch it because of what happened to Citizen Kane. But yeah, and I've never seen Easy Rider, which a lot of people love, but I've never seen it. So.
Oh, you've never seen it?
No.
I don't love it.
Does that count? I guess it counts.
Sure. That is a very important film in film history.
And The Best Years of Our Lives, I've never seen either.
I've never seen that either.
Yeah.
Maybe we should. It's supposed to be great. Maybe we should do Best Years of Our Lives when both of us haven't seen it.
Maybe that's a separate podcast. Separate series. Start a whole new podcast called It's Supposed to Be Great.
Do you really have time for another podcast, John?
Not if I want to keep my relationship. All right. That was Carlin Canales. Thank you so much for that question. Laura Deverson, also a fan of the Top 10. Thank you, Laura. Hi, gentlemen. Congratulations on this amazing and well-deserved milestone. There are so many episodes I revisit on a regular basis. I tell you, that's a great compliment.
It really is.
That people would want to listen to us again. It's fantastic. I particularly love the Civil War episodes. That might be the greatest thing we've ever done.
I'm really proud of those.
Yeah, you should be. You did a great job on those, Steve.
You too.
Thank you. I love storytelling in all its forms, and I get my story fixed from varied sources. Is there a novel, graphic novel, biography, comic series, play, anthology, or true story that you think is ripe to be turned into a film or television series? I am asking in view of the recent great adaptations like Good Omens, American Gods, Lambs of God, and The Handmaid's Tale. Cheeky follow-up question. Are there any properties in any medium that you think should never be adapted? Thanks for taking my question, and congratulations once again for this great achievement. All the best, Laura from Sydney, Australia.
I'll tell you one that occurs to me.
Okay.
Because there's so many things that I love to have been done.
Yeah.
There was a time that I wanted to direct Watchmen. Been done.
Yeah. And it's about to be done again in a weird way.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. One that a comic book that I always loved that I think would make a great TV show was The Question.
Oh, yeah.
I love The Question in the late 80s, written by Denny O'Neil, and the artist was just John Blank got his name. Mm-hmm. Read him over and over again. It's hard-boiled detective with a kind of messed up lead character in a sort of superhero but not powered world. I think that would make a great Netflix dark series.
It was a great time to collect The Question at that time too, because The Shadow was coming back as well.
Right.
So both of them at the same time were so great to pick up, and I became a Spectre fan kind of because I felt like those three characters really are connected in some way, and they were fun to read at that time in the 90s, right? They were so great, late 80s, early 90s. I would say for me, one of my favorite authors is Andrew Vachss, which a lot of people don't know.
I haven't read Andrew Vachss at all.
It's Vachss. His wife, I don't know if she still is, but while he was writing in books, she was the assistant prosecutor for sex crimes in New York. And so he had access to all these case files and all this stuff going on, and he created this character called Burke, who is a private detective, but he's a criminal. So people come to him with I need you to save this child, or I need you to save this woman from this situation. And it's always a very complex situation. He ends up out in rich areas, out in poor areas, playing certain characters to try to get to the source of who the villain is in each one of these stories. He has a great ensemble of characters who are his friends who help him out. There's an Asian lady named Mom who runs a Chinese restaurant, and she feeds him, but the Chinese restaurant is a front for money that they do gambling-wise, and she always tells people that they're closed unless they're doing gambling stuff. He has a friend called the Professor who is a diminutive black guy who's been on the street for multiple decades and is kind of a pseudo-father figure to him and helps him through situations. All of these are phenomenal books to read. If you like hard-boiled stuff from the underbelly of New York, this stuff I would love to see as a series on Netflix or HBO or Showtime that really shows you the grittiness of those characters.
The other one that you've heard me talk about over and over again, but the Master and Commander books,
right?
Which Peter Weir made the one adaptation of. It's like that would actually be far better as a series because it's 21 books of which you see these characters over 20 years of their lives, and they're much more episodic than they are kind of big stories. Unfortunately, it would be so expensive to do that kind of a thing as a series. She also asked if there's any properties that shouldn't be adapted. I'm hesitant to say that there is, mostly because there are things that have been adapted which I had thought were not adaptable. Like Handmaid's Tale is one, which is a book that I like. I think I felt it was more important than a book that it's not a likable book.
Right.
And seeing what they did with it is just remarkable.
Yeah.
I mean, and so I hesitate to say things shouldn't be adapted. There are certainly things that I think are dated and not well suited to film, but not necessarily ones I wouldn't adapt.
Yeah, I'm with you. I hesitate to say anything shouldn't be adapted. I think over the last few years I've been proven wrong a number of times on things that shouldn't be adapted and were and came out to be really great. So I would be remiss to I don't know what the word is. I guess I can't find it right now, but I would be hesitant. That's the number one word, hesitant to say anything should not be adapted. Because no matter what gets adapted, like I never thought Sandman could get adapted, but now it's getting done. So we'll see.
By the way, isn't not finding the word when you're recording on the podcast like the worst thing in the world? But there are times where I'm editing and I hear I used the wrong word or said the wrong thing or totally slurred or misspoke, like said the wrong character did thing. I'm just sitting there going, damn it. And like if I can take it out and fix it, I will. But there's sometimes where it's like in the flow of here's a stupid thing I said and I have to let it stay in the damn podcast. Drives me nuts.
I imagine so.
This one from Matthew Kearns. Hi, John and Steve. Thank you for the 150th episode of the Cine-Files. This podcast is fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Matthew.
Thank you, Matthew.
And it's inspired me to create my own. Oh, congratulations on your podcast. Put it up on our Facebook page or something.
He's been asking me to come on and do Armageddon with him. I won't do it. Good.
we have done the definitive episode on Armageddon. My question is, if you could have one filmmaker on the show, who could it be, and what film of theirs would you talk about?
Ooh.
We already said Orson Welles, obviously.
Yeah, but alive, I would take Paul Thomas Anderson.
Oh, that would be great.
And I would love to talk about There Will Be Blood for like 6 hours.
Well, that would break one of our fundamental rules.
Which is, the 10-year thing.
No, not the 10-year thing.
Okay.
No, that we don't have people to talk about their own work.
Right.
But we can cheat.
We can suspend it for this question.
We can cheat. Yeah. You know who I would think would be great to have on to talk about a movie that he loved, not necessarily his own films, is Ron Howard.
Oh, yeah.
I think he would be, because he is he's one of the filmmakers. I don't think he's the greatest filmmaker in the history of Hollywood, but he's one of the filmmakers that I teach in my classes of like, you actually can be a nice guy who's well organized and a great craftsman who's made many really, really good films.
Yeah.
You know?
I would throw Fincher in there as well.
Oh,
talk
he'd be
about Zodiac.
Yeah.
I would love them talking about Zodiac. That was Matthew. Thank you, Matthew. Henrik Winterland. Hey there, Steve and John. Henrik here. Huge fan of the show from Sweden. I don't know the greeting in Sweden. I've got 2 questions for you guys in case one of them has already gotten answered. What are some of your favorite movies that you don't think you'll ever talk about on the show? And do you think Americans will become more or less accepting of subtitles in films as time goes on? Relating to this, what are some of your favorite movies that aren't in English that you haven't already discussed on the show? Thanks in advance. Okay.
There is a list of movies that probably will never be on the show.
Yeah.
One that we really talked about that I still think is a great film, but now I just can't see my way to doing it, and that's Animal House.
Yeah.
You know,
it's troubling.
It's a troubling movie. And I want to say this really clearly. I think it is a great movie.
Sure.
I think it is really funny. I think it is groundbreaking, and I think it is got a lot of stuff in it that I just don't know how I can give voice to on the pod. And I've struggled with it because I did some research on it, and we had talked about it, and I don't know if there's a way to do it.
Yeah. Well, and we even thought of who a guest would be to be on it. The other side of that coin for me is, I know it broke my heart that Steve refuses to do this one, I think. Caddyshack. He's not one of his favorite.
I wouldn't refuse. I'd do it. I don't. It's funny. I think Animal House is a better movie.
Okay.
But I do, and Caddyshack doesn't have the troubling things that Animal House has.
It doesn't.
No. So, no, you want to do Caddyshack.
Okay. Unless you don't like poop in the water, it doesn't have troubling things.
Not offended by a person munching on a Baby Ruth in a pool.
There you go.
Revenge of the Nerds.
I don't think we'll ever do Revenge of the Nerds, even though we love that movie. I do, actually.
I loved it at the time. I haven't watched it in a long time.
I don't see that, like Zorro the Gay Blade will never do, and I love Zorro the Gay Blade to pieces. Or Love at First Bite, those two classic 80s back-to-back movies from George Hamilton.
I watched both of those over and over again. I have no memory of either.
What?
Because I haven't watched them since the 80s.
I have both on DVD.
That's awesome.
Subtitles in films, I don't think so. I think what's happening now is even more so people are doubling down on the America thing. Not to get too political, but it feels like people are pushing against foreign stuff more and more nowadays, and I think that is bleeding into film. Unfortunately, I don't see foreign films as revered or as talked about as I used to in the days, maybe even 10 years ago or 5-10 years ago. You could talk about those films all the time.
Yeah, I don't see Americans getting any better about this. There's tons of movies. Obviously, we talked about Seven Samurai and Kurosawa.
Yeah.
There's I love Rules of the Game, Jean Renoir.
Oh yeah.
There's Rome, Open City, and Italian neorealism. Certainly, films like Eisenstein and Battleship Potemkin are big cinephile. I probably like Ivan the Terrible better as a movie, but they're big cinephile films. Well, actually, that one's not subtitled; it's silent.
It's silent, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Neither you or I are huge French New Wave people.
No, I don't.
I'm sorry, you love Godard.
I love Godard.
Yeah.
I do not like Truffaut. I don't like 400 Blows. I don't like Jules and Jim.
Because you really want to do Breathless sometimes.
I do. I love Breathless.
I haven't seen it since film school.
Really? I'll lend you my copy.
So there's a lot of reasons. I think we're uncovering a lot of things to have conflicts about.
Yeah. Well, that's how it goes. That's the fun of it. Like,
if you don't
what
like the
appeals
movie
to you?
I like, then we're in deep trouble.
I would also put in, like I've said, Tous les matins du monde, All the Mornings of the World. Find that French film. It's a fantastic film with Gerard Depardieu. Cyrano de Bergerac is one that we should do. It's fantastic.
Yeah. This is from Tyler Spots.
Okay.
John and Steve, congrats on reaching 150 episodes. Thank you. I've really enjoyed listening to this podcast and learning about tons of different films that I'm sure I wouldn't have seen otherwise. My question is, what are some movies that you really enjoy but are hesitant to do an episode on due to movies' length, content? I think we kind of just answered this. Thanks for answering my question and for excellent contact you provided each week.
Due to movie length.
I don't think there's – I mean, we just did the Civil War, which is 11 hours. I don't think we're bothered by length. I think there are certain content things that we talked about that maybe make it difficult. There are some movies I felt like would make better episodes than other movies, you know, because when the episodes are really good, in my opinion, is when our discussion with the guests is really free. There's a lot to talk about. Like where the episode doesn't feel as good to me is where it's just sort of this happened and then this happened. I don't like listening to the sound of my voice too much describing the movie. Right. That's where it doesn't feel so good. So there's somewhere I kind of go like, well, what are we going to talk about? Yeah. Not that I don't like the movie, but what will we talk about, you know?
I guess looking at a movie's length is interesting as well, but I think we've done well at tackling long movies. We did Giant,
Lawrence of Arabia,
Ben-Hur, yeah. So it's all a matter of like, is the length worth it to cover the movie and do a good episode on? That's really the number one thing. Content-wise, there are things we're not going to do. Like we're not going to do Birth of a Nation, or we're not going to do any number of things that are kind of troubling in that way. That's for sure. I don't know if there's another reason other than, those seem to be the only reasons is content, I think, at the end of the day for us.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Tyler, for that question. What are we moving on to? That is Jason Staples. Yeah. Hi. I am in the beginning stages of putting together a podcast of my own. Oh, well, congratulations.
Everyone's making a podcast. podcast.
What do you know? I will be critiquing and analyzing. Oh, I like this. A very profound statement. I will be critiquing and analyzing indie cinema and movies that get passed over. I'm a big fan of your podcast and how in-depth the both of you are. How do the both of you study a movie while watching it? What is the process for note-taking? Any advice for a future film podcaster?
So first of all, I think it's practice,
Mm-hmm.
and I think I've gotten really good at being able to watch the movie and think about the movie at the same time and type. So for me, like when I'm watching a film for the podcast, I'm typing constantly.
Yeah.
It's a good thing I took that touch typing class in high school. That was like a really valuable thing. I think, but you know what I think helped was both of us did that DVD quality control job where you had to not get sucked into the movie, but really be watching for seeing things. And that, I think now that we've been doing this for 3 years, it's just very natural to me to be kind of noting the camera angles or noting themes or noting important lines or color control or music or things that are happening in the film when I'm watching the film. So I just think doing it a lot.
Yeah, I think for me it's I've always kind of had a propensity to analyze films, so it's always just a natural instinct. I think what Steve talks about is the way to do it as well. It's just practice and honing it so that you can do it quickly. So for me, when I watch a movie before we do it for the show, I watch it as close to the recording of the show as possible, so it's as fresh in my mind as possible. And as I'm watching it, I'm letting what do the athletes say? I let the game come to me. I'm letting the film come to me, and seeing where what it's trying to say, seeing themes, seeing new ways to look at it, new ways to explore it, and doing a job that I do like at Collider, being analytical naturally, it helps to do that. And Steve, going beat by beat through the movie, it helps me to remember what the things I want to talk about as we go along. So I never write anything down. It's always in my mind from memory. But when we go the process that we go through with the Cine-Files, it brings up that memory of talking about a certain thing. I rarely walk away from an episode going, "Oh, I should have said this."
Well, I think, and this is why one of the things I can give you as a piece of advice, Jason, is have a good partner, because John and I do different stuff.
Yes.
So mine is like kind of methodical and painstaking and building out my notes and organizing my thoughts over a period of time. And John's more watch it right before, be really fresh and emotionally reactive and ready, and have sort of those thoughts to kind of come in. And that's why we complement each other really well in terms of doing it. The big thing I say, so I have, because I don't know, my teaching's coming up so often, but I have students and they have to present a scene in class, and so frequently they'll put their clip, a film that they like, they'll put it up there and they'll say, "Okay, so here's this film that I'm presenting," and I'm kind of like, "Well, what do you think about it?" And like, "Well, it's really good." I'm like, "No, you need to say more." So my other advice to you, Jason,
it's like really good,
is to say, it's so funny. They all do the same. They'll do the same thing. They'll say like the one thing they've thought of to say, and then they'll kind of look over at me sort of awkwardly, and then kind of shrug and say, "So, yeah." And I'm like, "Is that it?" And like, "Yeah, I guess so." I'm like, "Yeah," and this happens all the time. So, Jason, the big thing is you should have something to say.
Yes.
What is it that you bring to the film? What is it that you've thought about? How do you analyze? Why do you think this film is important or groundbreaking or interesting or useful or brings attention to some issue or idea or emotion? If you don't have those things to say, you don't have a podcast.
Yeah, and I've heard from a number of people who start out doing the podcast, "Oh, other people have said it, other people have done it," and they're afraid to read other reviews because they're afraid that their ideas will pop up in those reviews and they're not original. No, those reviews validate that you are looking at the film correctly. And so that's a positive, and use that to motivate you to get even deeper and explore in a certain way, because no one is bringing what Jason brings to the review of a film or because of Jason's own experience. So that's what Steve's absolutely right. Bring your own voice to the situation. That's going to make you stand out.
Is this from me or you?
You.
Okay. This is from Ryan Lieb, and he says, "Hello, Steve and John. Huge fan of the show. What do you think qualifies as an epic?
Ooh.
What films, if any, from the past 10 years would you consider epic, and do you think the art of the epic film is dying?" You had a strong reaction to that question.
Yeah, because Matt and I, when we did our top 10 epic films, we battled over what was an epic and what isn't. I used to not think Braveheart was an epic, but I've come around on it and think it is an epic.
Well, do you have a definition of what an epic is?
It has to feel like the definition of the word, which is epic, monumental, large, massive canvas. It has to feel like, and it's saying something big about our human condition or about the story.
David Lean, when we did Lawrence, had a quote that he said, an epic was defined by mixing the big with the personal.
Yes.
It's the wide shot and the close-up. And for me, Lawrence of Arabia is the archetypal epic.
Yep.
We're talking about big themes, big landscapes, big people, big film, lots of huge stuff going on, and we're telling a very personal story about a person. And so for me, Braveheart totally fits into that.
Yeah.
Bridge on the River Kwai fits into that. Ben-Hur obviously is one of the archetypal versions of an epic. Spartacus, totally.
Yeah.
Gladiator, kind of.
Comes close. You can argue it's an epic.
Yeah.
You can absolutely argue it's an epic. So it feels more personal than large.
It's going to be a long movie.
Yes.
It's going to have a big scope in terms of what we see and the movements of it.
Yeah.
And going to have a personal story. Is the art of the epic dying? I don't see a lot of them being made.
No.
I don't think people are making that kind of movie.
The money and the time is very difficult. Epics, but look at something like, I would argue Avengers Endgame or Avengers Infinity War. You can make a case that those films could be considered epics because, again, personal story amongst a larger backdrop with the galaxy and foreign invaders from, other planets, things of that nature. It makes it large, and the concepts are large, especially Endgame. And so I think there are epics. It's just very, very rare because I also think there aren't directors who are willing to create epics. I think Denis Villeneuve is the closest thing we have to an epic director, but he has yet to direct an incredible epic, even though Blade Runner 2049 could qualify if it had just a little bit of extra something else in it. I think it could have been considered an epic.
I think so. And again, this is where we get into what's our definition and does it really fit? But to me, an epic is not an action film.
Oh.
Okay, it can have action in it. Braveheart has action in
Certainly.
it. But you don't go to and this is the thing. Braveheart is not about the thrill of the battle.
Right.
It has battles.
Right.
Like the movie doesn't climax with a battle between, William Wallace and a bad guy. The movie actually the final battle, it's like 40 minutes later that the movie ends.
Yeah.
Lawrence of Arabia has battles. Ben-Hur has the amazing chariot scene, but Ben-Hur is not about the action.
Right.
Ben-Hur is about something else. That's to me why I wouldn't put Endgame. While it's certainly an epic canvas and it has epic themes going on, it's still a action movie, superhero movie.
I would fight back on that so hard because I think it's PTSD and mental health and all of that.
No, you're right. Perfectly good argument. Perfectly good argument.
So certainly
I wouldn't fight back.
We could go both ways. All right, Jeremy Creighton's our next one. He says, "Hi guys, longtime fan here. A while back, I asked Steve if he ever saw the movie in the subject line that is Once Upon a Time in America, and he had not. I'm wondering if he ever got around to it and John's thoughts on the film."
I could have used this as my answer to the earlier question of movies that you'd be surprised I haven't seen. I've still not seen it.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I've seen scenes from it, but no, I've never seen the movie.
Here's what I'll say. I've seen the film multiple times. And this is Sergio Leone.
Right.
So you expect something incredible from this man because of that trilogy. However, I would argue, and Once Upon a Time in the West, which is phenomenal. But I would argue that this film doesn't quite get there overall. I think at times it's overlong. I think James Woods and Robert De Niro don't have the chemistry that the old school actors had to convey that. I also think the rape scene with Elizabeth McGovern is very uncomfortable. And so the film, to me, although it is about these two friends that end up in this tragic way with a mysterious possible death, I think overall the film isn't as epic, you could say, or as great as some of the best gangster films there are out there.
I have no comment.
Okay. Fair enough.
This is from Aaron Kilberg. He says, when looking back at the films discussed on the podcast, what do John and Steve feel is the most underrated or underappreciated performance by an actor or actress?
That's incredibly difficult.
I don't have one I have one, but it's not one we've done on the podcast.
Okay.
Although I would do it.
Yeah.
Is Mr. T in Rocky III. I believe that is a fantastic performance and it never gets the respect that it deserves.
I think that's phenomenal. And I think that's absolutely a fantastic argument to make because he is scary as hell in that movie.
Terrifying.
He is Mike Tyson before Mike Tyson.
Oh, yeah.
And you believe every second of of every moment that he is on screen that he will tear Stallone's head off.
Yeah, absolutely horrifying.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic point. I don't know if there's been an underrated or underappreciated performance off the top of my head from the episodes we've done. Nothing leaps to mind necessarily. Maybe in Giant, Rock Hudson's sister. I think she is so fantastic in that role, and although she was nominated for it, no one rarely speaks about her anymore. You know,
McCambridge, is that?
Mercedes McCambridge.
Mercedes McCambridge. Yeah. This is from Florian. Oh, no, is this your turn?
I think so, yeah.
It's your turn.
That's all right. Hey, Steve and John, I'd love to know how many movies approximately you think you've seen in your life. Don't pretend like you don't know the number. All of us movie lovers have at least a close estimate, wink smiley face. Thank you for answering my question. All the best from Vienna, Austria. Flo. Oh, Vienna, I was there for 10 days years ago. Had a beautiful romance in 1998. I love Vienna, Austria.
Saw Big Lebowski there.
Saw Big Lebowski with a beer in my hand in an alley. It was fantastic.
Don't pretend I don't have this number in all movie I don't have this number, Flo. I really don't. Yeah. I have no way of I have maybe can make a better estimate on books I've read than movies.
It would take me at least 3 days to figure out the number of how many movies I've seen.
I have no idea. Hundreds of them.
You'd start at the AFI and then go from there.
Yeah, I mean, it's over 1,000 movies. It's probably over 2,000, but I don't really know.
Yeah, and the number keeps growing.
Yeah.
All right.
This is from Samantha Varela, and this is a really long one. Okay.
Holy shit.
Okay. Hey guys, my name is Samantha, and I love your podcast. Well, we thank you. I just had finished the Amadeus episode that goes way back to the beginning, and I don't remember which one of you said that your love for your film began with your father. That's you, John.
That was me, yeah.
Yeah. But I just wanted to say I am exactly the same way. My father actually loves classical music, and he and I watch this film every time I go home to visit. It's become a tradition. Just wanted you to know that love of film hasn't died with the millennials. I'm 23 and absolutely love cinema and analyzing it. Fantastic. That's great. I love that we are in a world where our parents can share that passion with their children, and it seems to continue, and hope it continues through every generation. Please continue doing this podcast. It is fun, innovative, and so diligent. I truly love and hope you continue. Anyways, I have some questions in my short time of listening to the podcast. Okay. One, I just listened to Raiders of the Lost Ark. Wow. Okay, that's the very first podcast. And talked about the great movies of Hollywood that actually ruined cinema.
You've been doing that since the first episode?
First episode,
fantastic.
Yeah. If I remember correctly, we got Raiders of the Lost Ark, Star Wars Jedi, and I can't remember the last one. Might have been Die Hard back then, but we've since added Silence of the Lambs, Mad Max, Road Warrior. But I want to know what qualities you actually dislike about all these popular films that everyone goes to see today, and then why do you think people are ignoring the independent films that are actually much better than the more popular ones? You want to start with that one?
We can. And just to clarify, she said Jaws, not Jedi, so I don't want that to be a mistake for her end. On her end. Here's what I'll say to you: I'm not in that camp with Steve. I don't think these films ruined Hollywood. It's my category. That's his, and I understand his point of view thoroughly. When you ask me why do I think people are ignoring independent films, I'll answer that. I think a majority of people just want to go get entertained now. They're challenged by our world enough, by our world in the politics, in they're trying to pay their bills, trying to deal with their own mental health, their mental distress, relationships. I don't think people want to go to films anymore and see these independent films the way they did in the past because I don't think they want to sink their teeth into this stuff anymore because they deal with it in real life.
See, here's what I think. I think in the beginning of the independent film movement, we had 3 networks or maybe 4 networks.
Great point.
And they were mainstream and they went to the kind of had to please everybody.
Yep.
And so the only place you could find an interesting story about a person who had been homeless, who had dealt with drug use and whatever it was by an interesting visionary filmmaker was to see an independent film.
Right.
Today, that role is really being taken by all of the peak television world we're in. Mm-hmm. There's so many interesting, complicated, difficult, challenging things that people can stay home in their house to watch, and the group, all be in a room together while Captain America fights. That's what we go to a movie theater for.
Yeah,
for the group experience, not for the indie film.
Yeah,
and so that to me is what's killing it.
I agree.
Number 2, is there such a thing as a bad movie? Yes, that's easy. I'm in no way a filmmaker, just a great admirer of cinema, and don't know nearly as much as I'd like to. But I ask because every director has a different point of view, and styles of film have changed so dramatically in the last 20 or 30ish years, and I don't like people. Like talking to people about movies that are just strictly saying that was a bad movie, because I think every movie has its advantages and disadvantages. Some have more than others. But anyways, I'd really like to know what you guys think.
Yeah, please tell me what Jack and Jill's advantages were from Adam Sandler. Then maybe we can have that discussion. I will say to you thoroughly, Samantha, I think there are films that are just bad movies. It doesn't mean that there aren't people who like them or people should be crucified for liking them. You have every right to like or dislike any film you want. But objectively, are there any bad movies? I would say there are, but of course, it's a subjective medium, so that's tough to say as an absolute.
I definitely think they're bad movies. I do think one thing I learned when I was in film school is, bad movies are really hard to make.
Yes.
Because all movies are really hard to make.
Mm-hmm.
And so that bad movie, that movie that really didn't work, might have had a director that really put their heart and soul into it. And sometimes the alchemy can be, you can have a lot of ingredients of a good movie and it still doesn't turn out right.
Yeah.
It's really, really hard to make movies. So I don't like people just tearing down films, from the cheap seats.
Right.
But I still think they're bad movies. We got a bunch more questions.
Should we just grab one?
Sure.
And then we'll move on.
How about when looking for present-day films to go to the movie theater to see, do you watch the trailer beforehand, or do you want to surprise yourself and just Google the summary and then go watch it? Google the summary.
Yeah.
I would never Google the summary of anything.
The synopsis, basically.
No, but I do watch trailers.
Yeah, I watch trailers all the time.
Yeah.
I love the art of the trailer. It's one of my. I know there are people who don't, and that blows my mind. To me, I love watching. But once I see one trailer or two trailers, that's it. That's all I need. I don't like to see every trailer for one movie, because it starts to bleed in, and you start to see that footage show up in the movie, and it's not authentic or an authentic experience because you've already seen it before. So yeah, definitely trailers. All right, that was Samantha. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. TJ Harden's next, right? Hey guys, been loving and listening to your podcast or your show for the last year and a half. So when will you get back into movies before the 70s? Thanks.
Soon?
Yes, soon. We've talked about Bridge on the River Kwai. That's before the 70s.
Yes, there are lots of them. They're on the list. I'm all for it. We do skew more towards more recent films.
Yeah.
And let me ask our Cine-Files out there. How are you guys just as enthusiastic about movies that are older movies that fewer of you have seen as you are by big, huge, popular classics like the Star Wars movies or Back to the Future or things like that?
Yeah.
Hit us up on our Facebook page or on Twitter. I totally am happy to go back and do more old movies. I love old movies.
Yeah. Have we done On the Waterfront yet?
No, I know it's one of your favorites.
We got to do that soon.
Okay. This is from Hans Eskelsen. Thank you for being the best movie podcast.
Thank you, Hans.
You're welcome. My question is, what movies that you deem one of the best films in film history that you will never rewatch? For example, for me, Clockwork Orange is a very well executed film, but due to the grotesque scenes and content, I couldn't rewatch this film. Thanks again for allowing me to listen to you gentlemen who love films like I do.
Okay.
So one that came up on the show, I don't think it's one of the best movies in film history, but I have no desire to ever watch Leaving Las Vegas again, although I think it's a really good film.
Okay.
Cuckoo's Nest is really hard for me to watch. It's actually a really fun movie, but when it gets hard...
One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very difficult film.
It's real tough
to watch as well. I would argue that The Deer Hunter is very hard for me to watch.
Yeah, that is really hard.
I've only seen it twice in my entire life.
Probably that's the same. I've seen it twice.
Yeah, and I'll probably watch it a third time when we do it for the show, if we ever do it for the show. But certainly that's one that I don't run back to and watch. I've seen Gone with the Wind once. Never, ever need to see that again.
I don't like it.
I don't like it either. I'm glad that we agree on that, and that'll never be done on the show.
There are things, again, I can appreciate things about it. And I'm not suggesting we should do it. We got plenty of other stuff to do. But there's tons of film history that's really interesting about that movie, but I don't care about it.
Schindler's List is another one. A fantastic film. Only seen it twice.
Me too. Probably two or three times.
Really hard to go back and do that one, in my opinion.
I'm sure we'll do that on the show sometime, but it's going to be that's going to be a tough week on me.
We should get someone from one of the centers around town who handles, who curates this. I think we have a Holocaust museum in town.
Yeah, it's a Museum of Tolerance.
Exactly. Yeah. We should get someone as a guest for that. What's the other one? Oh, Sunset Boulevard. I've seen it once and I don't run to see it again.
It's not one of my favorite movies.
Yeah, agreed. All right, that was Hans. Yes. All right, Devon Lott is our next one. Up top. Happy 150th show to you, Steve and John. My question to you is: what movie, past, present, or possibly future, would best represent and describe you personally?
Shaft.
Great choice. No. Great choice. I'm just talking about Steve Morris.
Shut your mouth.
Oh, Jesus. Past, present, or future?
What defines my... I don't know, man.
Really?
I really, this is a hard question.
You don't have a film that like you find yourself in the most in the protagonist?
Oh, there have definitely been moments... we had one on the show, which was Broadcast News, where I was Albert Brooks and you were William Hurt.
Right.
I don't think I am entirely Albert Brooks, but there are elements of that in me, absolutely.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think certainly. I don't know. It has to be a redemption story. That's certainly my life. So... there's not a film where I watch myself and I go, yeah, I can feel that that's me necessarily. But certainly I get inspired by films like, I would thoroughly think, and I think that's one of the reasons why it's one of my favorites is Last of the Mohicans. I absolutely see myself as him. Am I as cool as him? Hell no. But his instincts,
You weren't raised by Chingachi.
I wasn't, but the reverence I had for my own culture growing up versus the situation, everything like that. Certainly, I see myself in Daniel Day-Lewis's character in Last of the Mohicans. Yeah.
Okay, so this is from Ed Hochstetler.
Yeah, Hochstetler.
There's a long one again.
Sure.
Dear Steve and John, since discovering the Cine-Files podcast about a year ago, I've thoroughly enjoyed, though not always agreed, Roca, your opinions and analysis of some great films.
Yeah, fuck
the
you.
The parenthetical Roca was not from me.
No, it wasn't.
It was in this email.
Yeah.
My first podcast was Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, with Scott Mantz as your guest. That is an important Cine-Files landmark, I think. Yeah. It is still my favorite Cine-Files episode. As a geek of a certain age, born April 1968, hey, I'm 68 too, I was right there with you on the syndicated series. As a kid, everything stopped at 5 o'clock so I could watch Star Trek on Channel 12 in Portland, Oregon.
Nice. I just came back from there.
Oh, yeah. It's a great city, isn't it?
It is a nice city.
Starlog magazine and the whole, they won't kill Spock, will they? Anyway, here's my question for your 150th episode. It's a two-parter. Question 1. What was your most pleasant surprise when seeing a movie for the first time? What movie did you go in with low or no expectations and were genuinely surprised by how much you enjoyed it? For him, that was Pirates of the Caribbean. Makes sense.
Okay.
What do you think?
Aladdin?
Oh, the recent one?
Yeah.
It was really good.
I was so surprised at how much I enjoyed that movie. I went in waiting to hate it.
Me too. Well, I had actually heard you on the Geek Buddies. Everyone should be listening to the Geek Buddies.
Thank you, Steve.
I had heard you guys on it. I knew that, but still the first 10 minutes were really hard for me.
Yeah.
To let go of. And then once I understood who Will Smith's genie was, and this wasn't going to be Robin Williams, I went, oh,
yeah,
I totally like this.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a totally enjoyable movie.
Yeah.
For me, I've told the story before, but coming down from working at a summer camp for a half day off, knowing absolutely nothing in 1988, going to a theater to see this actor who had been in one of my favorite TV shows, Moonlighting, and walking into an empty theater to see Die Hard by myself is one of the greatest movie experiences of my life.
I can imagine, yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. Question 2. This is basically the opposite of question 1. What was your most disappointing movie experience? What movie let you down when you had high expectations, perhaps based on a trailer or an actor or director involved in the project? For me, that was Star Trek V, The Final Frontier.
Thoroughly agree.
Yeah, we all agree with that. He enjoyed Star Trek 2, still the best. Star Trek 3, a big step down from Khan, but still enjoyable. To to Star Trek IV, a refreshing change of pace, and possibly my second favorite Trek film. I was so up for Star Trek V where the trailer looked good, and yeah, Shatner was directing, but Nimoy had done then so what? And then he went to see it. Anyway, I look forward to seeing if my queries make the cut. They did. Keep up the great work on the Cine-Files, and even though I'm not currently a patron, I can't help but suggest Field of Dreams for its 30th anniversary.
Yeah.
I think that's definitely what I'd like
we
to
need to do that.
Not the kind of movie that gets made anymore. And whatever happened to Phil Alden Robinson? He did Field of Dreams and then Sneakers. I like Sneakers a lot.
Yep.
And then not so much. Take care. Thank you. He's from Lincoln, California.
Ooh, he's close. I don't know where Lincoln is.
Most disappointing film for me is so easy.
Okay.
So it was in the middle of shooting The Assistants. I had one night off. I was so excited to see this movie. It was the fourth in a series. We had waited a long time for it, and that was Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
Oh, yeah.
It was I love Raiders so much. I love the Indiana Jones series, and this was probably my most disappointing experience. It's the only time I saw it.
Yeah.
And I remember going like, oh, because the opening's kind of okay. And it's like, oh, and you have the first shadow of Indiana Jones. You're like, this is going to be cool. And then he gets saved from a nuclear bomb in a refrigerator. And I was kind of going, this could still be good. Come on, everybody. Right. It's going to be okay. It's going to be all right. And then, 20 minutes, 30 minutes into the movie, I was like, no, this is not going to be okay. This is terrible.
It's a phenomenal movie that brings together terrible performances from just about everybody.
Yeah.
Pisses away a great story of having Marion Ravenwood come back into Indy's life with a child. What that's like. Cate Blanchett is cast in your movie as a Russian villain. Like, all of it should have been fantastic, and it wasn't. Most recently, Batman v Superman certainly was one hell of a disappointment. Having loved Man of Steel and having been in Hall H when they presented it, having Harry Lennox read panels from The Dark Knight Returns, that was so disappointing. But my number one, kind of like Steve, set aside an afternoon, excited, taking some time off, going into the theater, had seen the trailers, couldn't wait, sat in that movie, and when it was over, just what the fuck? Godfather Part III.
Oh, yeah.
That film destroyed me. Just destroyed me because I was like 1 and 2. You bring Coppola back. People were dying for a third one. What happened to Michael? And you make Michael this sorry about everything guy, and you made him, you bowed to the pressures of the 90s to make this guy lovable. And the whole point of 1 and 2 was to make him not lovable, which you've said in multiple interviews. Why would you redeem him? Why? And then, in Nothing, Sophia has become a phenomenal director. Can't say anything negative about her ability as a director, but she was terrible in that movie, horribly miscast. And I thought it was vanity of ego of Coppola to do that. And the whole Diane Keaton thing, like bringing her, why bring Kay back? All of it just so didn't work, and the opera thing and all of it. That being said, though, the Pacino reaction at the end of the movie when the tragic thing happens is one of the greatest acting moments I've ever seen from anybody ever. And Garcia is great in the movie. But so much of that movie was a massive disappointment and heartbreaking to watch.
Yep.
All right, so that was Eric. He probably disagreed with my opinion. All right, Florian Kersey is next. Hi, John and Steve. I came up with 2 questions for you. First, what is the movie from this decade that you have watched the most?
For me, because I haven't watched, as I said before, that many movies in this decade. Yeah. But for me, probably J.J. Abrams' Star Trek. Mm-hmm. I've watched that a lot.
Oh, yeah, that's good.
And probably Guardians of the Galaxy is the one I've watched the most of the Marvel movies.
Wow.
What about you?
Logan.
Oh, yeah.
I'm up to my 50th viewing of Logan.
My numbers are nowhere near yours.
Do you mean less or more?
Oh, way less.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. When I say I've watched Star Trek the most, it's probably 6 times. Maybe 5.
I love Logan 2 pieces.
It's a great movie.
It really is.
By the way, I was thinking, this is just a quick digression.
Yeah.
I think you did like a top 10 superhero movies fairly recently. And I was thinking about this, is that there was a long time, when the number one superhero movie of all time was a non-argument.
Yes.
It was Dark Knight.
Yes.
There was just no question it was Dark Knight.
Absolutely.
And when you were doing that recently, I suddenly went, you know what? I think it's a almost a four-way argument for the top.
Okay.
Logan being one.
Yes.
Avengers Infinity War being one.
Sure.
And Spider-Verse.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, Spider-Verse might be my number one superhero movie of all time.
That's a fair argument to make, man.
That movie is so good.
And it's been phenomenal to find out people who don't like Dark Knight, like Kalinowski does. It's not that he doesn't like it. He doesn't think it's a Batman movie. He thinks it's a Joker movie that Batman is in.
Well, I think that is true.
Right.
I mean, Batman is not as important as the Joker in that film.
That's incredible. And I didn't know anybody could say anything negative about that movie, but hearing, certain people talk about it.
I think it's a great movie. But I think it is part of it is that Heath Ledger's performance is one of the greatest things ever put on film.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So if you take that out, it is not across the board as great.
Yeah.
It's still a great movie. And I put it as a four-way tie.
Sure.
But Spider-Verse I love that movie so much. It's so good.
I bought it in 4K recently. I can't wait to watch it in 4K, but it's on Netflix. So I would just pop it on as background while I'm doing stuff around the house. All right, the second question, totally unrelated. If every living director would release his or her next movie today and you knew nothing else about the respective movies, whose director's movie would you go see first? Keep up the great show and greetings from Leipzig, Germany. Thank you, Florian. Guten Tag.
I just drew a blank on his name.
Okay.
Baby Driver and all those.
Oh, shit. I don't know. Oh, Edgar Wright.
Edgar Wright.
Yes.
He is a really interesting, fun filmmaker. I always look forward to his movies.
Okay.
Obviously, Paul Thomas Anderson.
That's my number one choice. Yeah. He's never let me down. Yeah. That's my number one choice.
You know what it is? Edgar Wright's more fun.
Yeah, that's fair.
Paul Thomas Anderson, I go, okay, here we go.
See, but I go, okay, here we go. I jump into it. I love it. And I just interviewed for the Deep Cut, if I can put a little plug.
Of course.
I just interviewed Leslie Manville for the Deep Cut for an hour, who's the sister in Phantom Thread.
Oh, right.
And got nominated. She was a delight to interview.
Oh, that's awesome.
So you guys can look out for that if it's not out already on the Collider Conversations podcast feed. Yeah, it's Paul Thomas Anderson. And maybe Fincher. Maybe Fincher as a close 1A,
I love, there are many Fincher movies I love.
Yeah.
They don't have across the board, Paul Thomas Anderson is like, they're really good.
I agree with you.
Okay, this is from Christopher Prince. John and Steve, first of all, I would just like to say I'm a big fan of the podcast, and I hope you guys go for at least another 150 episodes.
There's enough movies.
There are enough movies, or more after this milestone. I feel very strongly that part of the fun of watching movies is seeing them on the big screen with an audience. My question is to you guys, if you could go back in time, whether it be 80 years or even a few months, which film or films do you wish you could have seen in the theaters on the big screen? I think we had this question the last time we did a Q&A.
Yeah, probably.
I think because we both said we'd want to see Citizen Kane when it came out.
Yeah,
I remember that. I would love to be there. There's certain movies that I think change the world in interesting ways. Is like, I would love to be there the first time a Bruce Lee movie was showed.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Or I would love to be there the first time that like Last Picture Show or The Graduate was shown. Like movies where no one had seen a thing like that before and be in that audience to react to it.
You know what's funny, Steve? A film I don't run to watch, but we did recently, Network. I think it would have been fascinating to sit in a theater watching Network and then have a Q&A afterwards. I think to see it for the first time in a movie theater and see that would have been fantastic. Ben-Hur is certainly one to be in a movie theater the first time. The epic nature of that movie would have been incredible to witness. And I think the first time seeing Godfather, seeing the theater, seeing Godfather, and the reaction people might have had afterwards. Yeah.
You know, it'd be fun too. So Jaws would be another one.
Oh, great choice.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
What's weird, by the way, is all of these, I don't know how if you're going back knowing the movie. So in my mind, I'm going back, I've already seen Jaws.
Right.
So everyone else is going to be screaming. I'm like, oh, here it comes. Oh, here's the head. Oh,
Right.
here's the, that'd be fun.
The roast.
Yeah.
All right, that was Christopher Prince. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Jack Pews. Hello, John and Steve. I was wondering what your thoughts were about this very popular trend in the industry lately of doing sequels, remakes, and reboots of past films. While I understand the business side of it, do you think it's hurting creativity? I personally love some of the content we've gotten from this trend, but I keep wondering when we're going to get the next great original film or idea that captures the minds of the world. I understand there's wonderful new content coming out each year, but nothing seems to have that pop that certain 70s and 80s movies had when they released, with a few exceptions. Every day I feel like they announce they're doing a remake of this or that, and it's getting a little frustrating for me. Just want to know what you guys thought. Thanks, Jack Pews.
It's funny. I think I feel like I kind of already answered this for me, which is that it's on TV.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like the world, like you'd said that the movie world is going to be like events, and I think that it's, these big communal events, and you're going to get the inventive 70s complicated stuff is going to be on TV. Yeah. And in a weird way, in some ways that's better because it's long form.
Yes.
Rather than just having 90 minutes or 2 hours or 3 hours to tell your story, it's 10 hours or 3 seasons or 4 seasons. So that's what I think.
I think it's a great point, Steve. A lot of great filmmakers are going to TV so they can have that extra time to create their pieces and really get people to sink into them and enjoy them. So that's a fantastic point. As far as the remakes and the reboots, look, studios are always going to default nowadays to money. What's going to make us money? A product people know. I know people are mad about the Disney live-action movies. Aladdin's about to pass $1 billion. Wow. Lion King has been an incredible opening. Whenever you're listening to this, it's opened and done so well. So, until audiences don't patronize these reboots or remakes or reimaginings, then they're not going to stop making them. So that's how it goes. It's you vote with your dollar by not going to these things. But as you said here, you're enjoying some of the content. So
yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
This is from Alex Ginley. Dear Steve and John, congratulations on making it to your 150 episode.
Thank you.
I truly hope we get thousands more. But here's the dreaming. Thousands, Alex.
My God, Alex.
I mean, how long do you think we're going to live?
Exactly.
My God. My question to you is, what cinematographers do you believe to be the greats? Roger Deakins and Freddie Young obviously come to mind. What others do you love?
Okay.
Deakins is the greatest cinematographer working today, in my opinion.
Sure.
Greg Toland, obviously, is one of the guys. Antonio Storaro, who's Apocalypse Now, an amazing cinematographer.
Yeah. Lubeski's another one that I like as well. The work he has done throughout the time that he's had to put stuff on screen and what have you. I've always enjoyed his work as well.
I'm trying to remember his name, the cinematographer from The Godfather, Gordon Willis.
Oh yeah, Gordon Willis,
fantastic known as the Prince of Darkness.
Yeah,
because he could get blacks like nobody else could get blacks.
That's a great point.
There's probably a ton more that I'm not thinking of.
Lubeski did Tree of Life, Ali, Like Water for Chocolate. You talk about Vittorio Storaro. Is that the one you were? Yeah. Footprints on the Moon. Greg Toland, we mentioned. Vilma Zsigmond.
Oh, Vilma Zsigmond, sure.
Good stuff there as well. We mentioned Conrad Hall, of course.
Conrad Hall,
Marathon Man. Those are some of the. Janusz Kaminski has done some incredible work as well as a cinematographer. I'm not as versed on them, but Haskell Wexler is fantastic.
Oh, sure. He did Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf that we did.
He did.
Oh, and Deschanel, because we did.
Caleb Deschanel.
Caleb Deschanel did The Natural, who did Black Stallion, and Right Stuff. I can remember them from the movies that we did.
And Wexler did Madawan, which is about to come out on Criterion, and I can't wait to have that in my hands. That's a film that I didn't know people knew enough about, and it's great to see that someone does, for God's sake.
Don't you think that the Criterion Collection company should hire the Cine-Files?
I think so.
As just a natural on every one of their upcoming releases, there should be a Cine-Files discussion.
I'm down.
Yeah.
Or at least one of us. I'm just saying. All right, Shireen McFarlane is our...
Did I just get fired?
No, I just mean... all right, hello, this is Steve. This would be nice. I would love to do a podcast affiliated with Criteria.
Wouldn't that be awesome?
Yeah. Shireen McFarlane's our next question. Hello, Steve and John. I've been listening to this podcast for the past couple of years, and each episode blows my mind. Oh, thank you. Thank you for going into so much detail and being so open/honest about how these movies have affected your lives. My questions are, do you know any of the famous people that listen to the podcast? No.
No.
Who is the most famous/influential person that you've worked with or had an interaction with? Keep up the impeccable work. Ooh.
Mine's John Roca.
Please. Yours is Joe Mantegna.
Joe Mantegna, yes.
Yeah.
Worked with him on The Assistants. A couple of Stacy Keach and Jane Seymour I worked with on that film. So those are great people to work with.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think if there are other people that I've really worked with. I've met other famous people, but not worked with them like that.
Well, interaction-wise, The Rock, Dwayne Johnson.
Oh, yeah.
That was really just the highlight of my life, getting to interview him twice now and talk to him. It's been fantastic. Influential, famous people you've worked with? Or maybe John Woo, because we did Wind Talkers. I can say that I worked with him, certainly in a voiceover sense and on camera. And I've enjoyed his movies thoroughly. But I don't know many other... Like, I interview people and talk to people, but do they influence me at that level? Rarely.
I theoretically wrote for Robert Redford.
Oh.
Yeah, one of the Cousteau documentaries I worked on, and I edited a bunch of sequences, and I wrote all the narration for my sequences, which Redford ended up being the narrator.
Oh, wow.
I never met him. What was really funny is, like, I had my versions because I did all the temp narration.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like my narration better than Redford's.
Yeah. That sounds like Steve Morris.
Exactly.
What's our next one?
It's from Parker Holler. Food. Hello, John and Steve, longtime fan and patron. Parker, thank you for your patronage from Woodbridge, Virginia.
Holy shit.
Virginias.
That's where I grew up.
Oh, really?
Yes. Wow.
My question is, what was the first movie that made you cry? For me, it's Armageddon. This is like from you.
Does that send this?
Yeah. He says, you're welcome, Roca. And what is the hardest you've ever cried from a movie? For me, it's Lord of the Rings, Return of the King. Suck it, Roca.
There we go.
I joke. Thank you for everything.
Well, I think Parker has emailed us before because he has the last name of two guys I went to high school with.
Oh, that's right.
And he's not related to them.
Yes.
But great to know you're there in Woodbridge, Virginia. Say hi to my mom and my family there. What is the first movie that made you cry?
Mine's Rocky. 100% Rocky.
Yeah, Rocky. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I think it might be The Champ.
We talked about this before. You said that was because I said Rocky and you said The Champ. We had this discussion. Maybe it was our last Q&A.
Maybe it was. I think it was Rick Schroeder and John Voight, that version of The Champ, not the Wallace Beery, Jackie Cooper version. And that was the one that I remember just like crying my face off at that movie. What's the hardest you've ever cried? Ooh.
So you know mine because you were there.
Okay.
Which was Up.
Oh, yeah.
So Up. So first of all, the opening montage in Up is one of the greatest pieces of filmmaking ever made.
Yeah.
I teach it in class. It is a remarkable montage. Up hit me at a time that was the roughest year of my life.
Yeah.
My dad was dying. My parents had just my dad was dying of ALS, and my parents had just made the decision to give up on travel plans because their whole plan when my dad retired was to travel the world, which is what's in Up. They were debating whether to sell their house because it had stairs and my dad was losing the ability to walk, so they wouldn't be able to go upstairs. My dog had just died.
Oh.
My wife and I had just found out we couldn't have children. Yeah. So that happens in that montage.
Wow.
At the end of the movie, what's his name pins the badge on Russell.
Yep.
My dad was my scoutmaster who pinned my Eagle Scout on me. And at the end, they have ice cream at Fenton's Ice Cream. Yeah. That's in Oakland. We used to go there and have ice cream with my family.
Wow.
So that movie was so directly at my life at that moment.
Yeah.
It was so, and I was sitting with all of you guys. We're at the El Capitan.
Yeah, I remember.
And I'm not I'll cry at a movie, but nothing like this had ever happened. I was so totally, completely destroyed by that film that we walked outside and we're all standing in a circle and it's like, hey, what'd you think? What'd you think? Hey, Steve, what'd you think? And I literally just went, I got to go.
Yeah.
And I just left. I couldn't even speak to anybody. That's my answer.
I recently Avengers Infinity War at the end, the second time I watched it. I
Right.
unashamedly just broke down in front of my friends who were seeing it for the first time, and I feel self-conscious about that. But the hardest I've ever cried, kind of a similar story to Steve, was maybe less than a year after my father had died. I had gone to see About Time, that British romantic comedy with Shannon, who's one of the member of the Geek Buddies.
Yes.
And the scene comes where the kid has to have that conversation with his dad about their relationship, and I don't want to ruin it for people who haven't seen it, but it's something that changes their relationship, and I broke, and I'm barely talking about it now without breaking again. I just snapped, and I was like Tom Hanks crying in Private Ryan after Giovanni Ribisi dies. That cough crying, convulsing crying. That was one of the worst cries I've ever had in a theater. Absolutely. Yeah. And it's, once again, that's the power of film, and also that's your reality being being touched by what you're watching on the film. Your reality being touched that way and causing that reaction. Yeah. So what was it? Why did it say food? It was all about
I don't know.
Crying.
I was all excited to talk about food.
Damn it, Parker. Todd Lewis, are there any guilty pleasure movies that you secretly or not so secretly love but have yet to find the right moment to mention it to the other guy that you really want to do an episode on it? Thanks for everything you do, you guys. I work third shift and always look forward to Friday mornings when I can listen to the new episode. Oh, thank you, Todd. And hey, shout out to you for working that hard, brother. We respect that.
Yep, absolutely. Guilty pleasures. First of all, I think there are going to be more of them. That's my I don't know. We did Con Air recently.
Yes, we did.
It was totally fun.
Put the bonnet down.
I think we need to celebrate our guilty pleasures and enjoy the silliness. It was funny. I was trying to think of what would be the next kung fu movie we do, because we haven't done one since Police Force.
Police Story.
It's the same.
Oh, is this it? Oh,
yeah.
Did you buy the Criterion one, by the way?
Not yet.
I almost bought it for you as a gift, but I thought you bought it.
I just missed the sale. Like I forgot to do it. Next time there's a sale, I'll get it.
Fair enough.
And so I was thinking, like, well, we probably should do like a Jet Li movie, like Hero or something, which is beautifully filmed and really talk about the martial arts. But then I was thinking, I actually love Return of the Dragon. Bruce Lee in Rome defending the weird Chinese restaurant where he fights Chuck Norris in the Coliseum. There's totally silliness in that movie that can't be defended. It's Bruce Lee. It's some of my favorite fight scenes.
Is Kareem in that one?
No, that's Game of Death. That's where Bruce Lee died in the middle of making it. So half of it is with somebody else.
Right.
Yeah, that one I don't know that we could do. There's not that much to talk about.
I'm down to do that one. The other one that
Return of the Dragon?
Yeah, Return of the Dragon. I'm down.
I think it's called Way of the Dragon is the other title for it.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of other guilty pleasures.
Major League is a guilty pleasure. Well, no, but people love Major League.
Yeah, I don't feel guilty about that.
It's not a guilty pleasure. I mentioned two earlier, Zorro the Gay Blade and Love at First Bite. Those are certainly guilty pleasures of mine. God forgive me. A Million Ways to Die in the West. I cannot explain to you why that film makes me laugh from beginning to end. I don't understand why I enjoy the fuck out of that film. Charlize Theron is fantastic. Seth MacFarlane is funny in that movie, and I'm not a Seth MacFarlane guy. But for whatever reason, that film just makes me laugh from beginning to end.
What did it come out like 2 years ago?
Yeah, so we can't.
8 years from now, we'll set a
After
date.
we've done thousands of films.
Is
there another guilty? Do you have a guilty pleasure?
I'm just trying to think. It's hard to me to remember.
That's My Boy, the Adam Sandler one. I have a guilty love for that.
I mean, not things that I wanted. Like I liked Waterboy probably more than I should have.
Yeah,
but I'd have no desire to do it.
Cable Guy. I love Cable Guy.
I didn't like it as much, but I saw it right in that film school angry era, so maybe I would need to revisit it.
Oh, The Heartbreak Kid. I enjoyed that remake, even though I had no business enjoying that remake.
This one is from Martin Windigger. Hey, Steve and John, I have a question for each of you. John, as you have mentioned a couple of times on your shows, you changed your name. I was interested in how you settled on John Stephen. How did your parents, family, and friends react to that decision? And do they still call you by your old name, or did they go with the change right away? I thought he was going to ask what the name was. I was like, that's not going to come out.
That's never coming out. Unless I love you, you don't get that name. And I mean in a romantic way.
It's like, don't you love me, John?
I changed the name when I was 9 years old because I was moving to a new city and I had been made fun of a lot in the old city, which was Coolmore at Falls Church, Virginia. And I was moving to Woodbridge, Virginia, and I changed my name because I was a fat Latino kid and I didn't want to get made fun of anymore. And I was moving into a predominantly white place to live. So I was a massive John Travolta fan at that time. So John is how that came about. That's how that came about. And that wasn't Jonathan, it's John. And Stephen came about because my mother had always wanted to name me Stephen. But my father, in the classic old school Latino thing, superseded her and named me what he named me. So that's it. And yes, initially my father's family had a really hard time with it because they felt it was an insult. And these are old school Latinos. Right. So they refused to call me that until I stopped responding to them whenever they'd call me the old name. I was a stubborn mule. I refused to do it. And thank God I had the support of my mom and my dad in those situations. To not respond. But no one calls me by my old name. It's been decades.
Steve, when did you know you wanted to get into directing? Was it something you always wanted to do, or were you originally interested in something entirely different? Sorry if you've already talked about these things in one of your episodes. I don't think so.
Nope.
I might have forgot about it or not listened to that episode. You haven't listened to every episode, Martin? Usually I watch the movies before I listen to your detailed analysis. Thank you for your time and all the great content. Yours truly, with greetings from Vienna.
Hey,
from Vienna.
Nice.
Martin the Windy. P.S. Awesome top 10 show in London. I was there. It was great. I would come again next year.
Oh, thank you, Martin.
That's awesome.
We're coming again next year.
That's right. So I always wanted to be an actor. I acted in my first thing when I was in first grade. I acted in something all through being a kid, all through junior high school. There wasn't I realized that when I was like a senior in college, I hadn't gone a year without being in a play my whole life, since I was in first grade. But freshman year in high school, there were two guys that did Zoo Story, the Edward Albee one act at my high school. And I watched them and I went, oh, I can't do that. That was my first, my first moment of going I'm not set up for that. And I said, I guess I'm not going to be an actor.
Wow.
That was
such a young age.
Yeah, I was 13 or 14. And it's funny thinking about it. And I still continue to act. I was always acting and stuff. But I wish, part of me wishes I had acted more because I actually like acting. And then in high school, junior year, I think, a buddy of mine wrote a play who's actually my most successful writer friend today, Carl Gajdusek, who wrote Tom Cruise movies. He's an executive producer on Stranger Things. He's written – he's a big-time writer. Wrote Liam Neeson movies. I forget the name of it. He was there was that Submarine TV show with Andre Braugher. He was just showing her on that.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah, no, Carl's big time. So he wrote a play and kind of went, hey, does anyone want to direct my play? And I was like, well, I'll direct it. And that was my first play that I directed, and it ended up going to the Bay Area Playwrights Festival. And suddenly I was like, hey, this directing thing feels really good. And I went to theater school and started directing theater, and that's kind of where it came from.
Wow.
And it's funny. I still like to act, but as you know, I like the whole thing. And the thing about directing is, thinking about the whole picture, the story, the editing, the way the thing's put together, all the details. That's what I really like to do.
Certainly. That sounds right. All right. Next question here is from Matthew Hasso, who's a big fan of the top 10 and Cine-Files. Steve and John, as always, thanks for all the amazing content. Fridays are made better by every new Cine-Files episode. Oh, thank you, Matthew. Question, what is your favorite Studio Ghibli film? Will you ever cover one on an episode?
Totally. Do it.
Yeah.
I like Howl's Moving Castle.
Okay.
I like Princess Mononoke is not my favorite one.
Okay.
What's the other one? There's the other one.
Let me read them all off to you and see what you think. Nausicaa, Castle in the Sky, Grave of the Fireflies.
Castle in the Sky was what I was thinking.
Yeah, is it? Okay, yeah. Okay. My Neighbor Totoro, Kiki's Delivery Service, Only Yesterday, Porco Rosso, Pompoko, Whisper of the Heart, Princess Mononoke, My Neighbors, The Yamadas, Spirited Away, which a lot of people love.
Spirited Away I like a lot too.
The Cat Returns, Howl's Moving Castle, Tales from the Earthsea, Ponyo, Arriety from Up on Poppy Hill, The Wind Rises, Tales of the Princess Kaguya, and when Marnie was there. Princess Mononoke is my favorite. Bar none. Bar none. There's something about that story that I love to death. The visual nature of it all is incredible. Going back into that time, the train rides, all of it just really works for me on so many levels. And for whatever reason, it's one of those Ghibli films that I don't fall asleep in. I always fall asleep in these Ghibli films near the end or about 20 minutes.
They have a certain pace.
Yes, and it's like you got to be totally dialed in to enjoy it. But I find I fall asleep. But Mononoke is the one film that I've never fallen asleep in and thoroughly enjoyed.
Hi, Steve. This is from Anthony
Gonzalez. Yeah.
Hi, Steve and John. Cheers to 150. If you guys could cheat and review a film before its 10th anniversary year tomorrow, would you do Arrival, Logan, or Sicario? For me, it'd be Logan.
Yeah, I'd have to say Logan.
Sicario might be second.
Arrival would be second for me, but I hear what you're saying.
Yeah. I do like Arrival. I do that too.
Yeah.
It seems as though we're getting closer and closer to Quentin Tarantino writing and directing a Star Trek film. I enjoy about 2/3 of Quentin's work and am a lifelong Star Trek fan, but I just don't think he's a good fit at all for Star Trek. Do you agree?
Yes.
I've gone really back and forth on this. When I first heard it, I was like, no, absolutely not. He's wrong. And as came up in Inglourious Basterds, I have weird issues with Quentin Tarantino, who I think is an absolute genius. I think he's a brilliant filmmaker. He writes brilliant dialogue. He has an amazing style that I love, but there's also an arrogance to him that kind of rubs me the wrong way sometimes. And so I kind of go, no, he shouldn't touch my precious Star Trek. But then I kind of went, you know what? Why not? Like, why not have that crazy artist come in and do a take? And maybe I'll like it and maybe I won't, but it would be really interesting.
Certainly.
Plus, I do know that he is a genuine, real, old-school Star Trek fan.
Yes, he is.
Yeah. If you had to guess, did you have more to say on that?
Just that I don't want to see cussing and sex in my Star Trek or overt violence like he loves to do.
Yep, that's my feeling too. If you had to guess, what would be the first Kevin Costner Cinephile episode that you'll eventually get to, and to the Outlaw, should there be a Kevin Costner slice on the Schmodown wheel?
I think he certainly deserves a Schmodown slice on the wheel. A lot of epic films that a lot of us, or a lot of films that have left impressions on so many of us. We haven't done a Kevin Costner film?
No, I don't think so.
Fuck me. We got to handle that.
So, well, we already talked about one tonight, which is Field of Dreams.
We did.
Yeah. We talked about one recently that I love, might be a guilty pleasure, is Tin Cup, which I adore.
Tin Cup would be fun.
Totally.
I want to throw Open Range in there.
I've never seen it.
What?
Yeah.
My friend would like to lobby for Open Range.
Let's do it.
Such a great film. Okay.
Lastly, a filmmaking question. Sometimes a director will shoot a scene of simply displaying characters walking maybe down the street at night, through the woods or hills, or down train tracks a la Stand By Me. But sometimes the director will shoot essentially the same thing, but the only difference in this instance is the director is trying to convey that these characters are being watched or followed. What would you do differently? Just curious. Thanks for answering.
That's a you question.
So the first thing is long lenses rather than wide lenses. Long lenses give you flatten out space and give you more of a sense of being watched. And the biggest trick is that if you shoot first of all through something. So if I'm shooting through the trees or through the leaves, so you see foreground as well as the characters far in the background, that gives you a sense of being watched. And the biggest one is you do handheld. So if you're in a horror movie and you want to have the sense that someone's being watched, well, then make the camera handheld, shooting through the trees. As someone walks by, they're being watched.
Yeah, that's great.
Pretty basic.
Okay. All right. Last question from Jay Quarantello. Hi, Steve and John. I know you have a Q&A show coming up soon, so I had a couple of questions to send along. Also worth noting, I love the show. I look forward to each week's episode. I'm also teaching a high school English class where we analyze films, and I've assigned them summer reading to watch Citizen Kane, as well as listen to your podcasts on Orson Welles and the Citizen Kane commentary.
That's awesome.
That's pretty great. Awesome. Thank you, Jay. Anyways, the questions. Steve, how do you prepare your research on a film for each episode?
I mean, the first basic one is whatever's on the Blu-ray. So if there's a commentary track and behind the scenes, that's always where I start. I always look at check out a few articles, whether it's Wikipedia or if they're important sort of critical things. That's the main stuff. And just the process has kind of gotten refined over time, which is that when I watch the movie, I'm just typing through the whole thing, which honestly is the least fun part of the Cine-Files
I'm
now,
sure.
is watching the movie. Because trying to get all the important lines of dialogue written down and everything in the right order and all the details just in order is hard. And then I create a separate document where I put in just kind of all my notes from all the other research, and then I incorporate the second document into the whole movie, placing everything sort of where I think we might talk about that particular thing.
Right.
Until I end up usually with a 25 or 30-page document that I'm going through when we're doing the episode.
The irony is that Steve has refined the technique, but it's led to longer episodes.
Right.
That's the irony of the whole situation.
So much irony.
Steve and John, do you ever get angry at one another over your discussions? Does the anger last outside of the studio? Thanks, Jay. No.
Never. I never get angry over our discussions.
Over our discussions, no.
Well, off mic about entirely different things,
yeah,
sure.
Right. We've battled at times about the direction of the show or the time constraints and what have you, but that happens. I've battled with Matt, and I'll probably battle with Shannon and Mike at some point with Geek
Not
Buddies.
with Shannon.
Yeah. Well, I've never fought with Shannon, except one time when he left me alone, that son of a bitch. When he went and I was grabbing a pizza at Comic-Con 3 years ago, and he left a man behind.
Never leave a man behind.
Never leave a man behind, that drunk son of a bitch. He ran off without me. I was nervous and I was scared. These were like unsavory people that looked like they were about to gut me for my money.
So much stuff goes on at Comic-Con.
Comic-Con is not as joyful as people make it out to be all the time. No, we never fight. But I always enjoy. The reason we did this show was Steve came to me and he said, "I want to do this show. Will you do the show with me? Because I love talking about film." And we had discussed the possibility of doing a 3-person show
with Blue.
Where we were going to call, I don't know, what do you think? That was going to be the name of the show. I don't know, what do you think? But then that never really came to fruition. And Steve one day was like, "I really want to do the show. We're going to do the show." And I was like, "Great, that sounds like fun." And it's been fantastic to have these discussions with Steve because I respect Steve's intelligence and knowledge of films and analysis of films. And it's always good to see it like another way to look at something.
Well, and it's like we disagree.
Yeah, certainly.
I mean, sometimes you're very wrong. but that never makes us angry. That's part of what's fun. In fact, some of my favorite episodes are ones where we strongly disagreed.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's what being a cinephile is like, not agreeing all the time.
Like Lost in America, I'll never fucking see again. And you love it to pieces.
That's what happened. Now, Armageddon, I understand why you love it. It is a dumb movie.
Yeah, there you go. And it's fair. Absolutely.
So that is all our questions for our fans. John, I have a question for you.
Oh, this coming from at SR Morris?
From at SR Morris.
Yes.
Do you think that if you were going to pick an era of film that's going to be representing you, would it be the director moments of the 70s auteur filmmakers? Would it be the well-constructed films of the 80s, the musicals out of the golden age of Hollywood? What's your era?
I think I've always felt that the 70s is where I live and breathe. The grittiness, the urban, the dirtiness of those movies, and the willingness to show a mirror to the ugliness and corruption of our institutions. I've always felt an affinity for that in the 70s. And I think it's such a unique and lost art of filmmaking that it breaks my heart all the time because not a lot of filmmakers nowadays are willing to destroy the institutions or expose the institutions or explore the institutions of our lives because everyone is afraid to have these institutions fall around them. So, yeah.
That's probably mine too. Yeah. And between films like Network and Godfather and The Conversation and also films like Rocky and Jaws and Star Wars, that's a really amazing era of film. But I'll tell you what's interesting, and it's really from doing the Cine-Files. My respect for the 80s has gone up and up.
Oh,
and up.
yeah.
There are just so many like, wow, the 80s is an amazing era of films that I didn't think about because maybe when I was more like irritating intellectual, I was like, no, it's all about the 70s and the gritty.
Right.
Well, I love that stuff, but it's also like, you know what? Amadeus and Raiders of the Lost Ark and The Breakfast Club and When Harry Met Sally and Die Hard, and there's so many great great movies of the 80s. There's a lot of great stuff.
I agree with you, and that's the thing that I think that's a fair point, rediscovering the 80s, because also you get caught up thinking, oh, it was all neon colors and bubblegum poppy stuff that isn't really have any value. But remember, in the 50s, there were a lot of gritty, dirty films as well, and the music was very poppy and fun and bubblegum as well. So I think there's a lot of correlation between the 50s and the 80s in terms of films and filmmaking. And I think my second favorite decade might be the 50s, and then the 80s third, and then possibly the 2000s to the 2010, 2000, 2010.
Not the 90s.
Not the I just
it's not a great. It's not my favorite decade.
Yeah,
of film.
I don't have as
Although
much.
There
affinity.
are great films.
Yes, there are
definitely great films.
I just don't have the affinity for the 90s that some people might have.
Can I tell you one more thing before we go?
Sure.
So I have an idea of something to do for the Cine-Files.
No, not you.
It would break all the rules.
Oh, no.
I've been thinking lately, and this is just because it would be fun, is to do the entire MCU.
What?
Yeah.
Like, what do you mean?
Well, I'm not entirely sure, but maybe because not all of those movies deserve its own episode.
No, certainly Iron Man 2 does not.
Yeah, Iron Man 2 doesn't. Thor 2 I don't think really does.
Yeah.
Like we could take some of them and do 2 or 3 movies in an episode. But some of them do deserve a whole episode.
So we could do the Iron Man episode, the Captain America episode, the Thor episode, the Spider-Man episode, the Avengers episode. Is that what you're talking about?
I'm saying go through in order the entire MCU up to Endgame.
Right.
And do phase 1 and go through the whole thing, or phase 1 and 2.
Okay.
From beginning to end.
One movie a week?
I would think, well, that's what I'm saying, is that some of them maybe would be 2 movies in an episode because they'd be shorter.
Right. That's what I'm trying to clarify. Do you mean all the Iron Man movies in one episode, or do you mean one episode?
No, I'm saying, first of all, I don't know the answer. I was just thinking about this, is that maybe the good movies get a whole episode.
Yeah. Iron Man should get a whole episode. 2 and 3 should be...
Iron Man we already did.
Right, we did. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
2 and 3 can be their own episode.
Yeah.
I think Thor 1 and 2 can be their own episode. And
Guardians of the Galaxy, its own episode.
Yeah.
Civil War and Winter Soldier, they get their own episode.
Yes.
What do you think of this idea?
I like this idea, but I don't want us to lose touch with the old stuff. So as long as we mix in the old stuff, I'm down with it, unless you're talking about a 3-month...
It would be I don't know. I mean, if we did it all together, it would be a 3-month journey.
Well, I think if our patrons up their support of the show, that makes a lot of sense. This is the exchange, and maybe we have separate conversations about each of the movies that we give to the patrons as a thank you. So I don't know, where are we at right now? Let's get to 2,500, and then maybe that's a possibility.
Like this idea.
I do.
Got anything else you want?
Yeah, this is from At The Roca says, Steve, I got a question for you.
Yes.
By the way, love the show. What has been the one thing you've discovered over the last year of doing the Cine-Files that has surprised you about the show, or that you didn't anticipate? Or have you changed how you view the show now over the last year?
There are episodes in the course of the Cine-Files that have changed the show, in my mind. Mm-hmm. And some of them were in very subtle ways. Amadeus was the first that's our first really good episode.
I agree.
Apocalypse Now, West Side Story. Those are ones where I had to change the way I thought about the show and the way I approached it. The Civil War is a transformative episode in terms of how I edit the show in ways that might be that no one will ever notice.
Yeah.
The big thing that happened in the Civil War, because it was so big, is that traditionally what happens in the show is that we sort of tell the story as we go along, and then when we get to a moment that's interesting or makes a good cut into the quote or the music or whatever it is that we say, and then this happened, or and then he said blank, and then I cut to the thing.
Right.
And I couldn't do it that way in the Civil War because we didn't walk through every single thing that happened because it was too long. And then what happened was, instead of us introducing the moment that I cut to, frequently we were talking about a thing and then I cut to something completely different because we could have the narrator in the Civil War introduce the next moment. And that changed the dynamics in the way that the show was edited because it allowed more freedom. And in fact, the choices became, again, this is just me thinking about the process. I don't know that anyone's perceiving it this way, but the choices became more artistic because it wasn't just this happens and then this happens and this happens. It's we're talking about a thing, and then the edit to the film changed the subject. And then that led us, so Int introduced the new subject, and then we are talking about the next thing. And that is something I've been incorporating more in how I've been editing the show since then.
Okay.
And I'm hoping to change to some degree the way that I take my notes to allow for more of that, because what's nice about it is I want the show to feel free in the way that it's organic, that this is just this thing happening, not so much me just telling a story, which I get tired of listening to myself.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, we've made it through our 150th episode, and we couldn't have done it without all of our support from all of our fans. Obviously, those questions were fantastic, and thank you so much for sending them. We love interacting with you, so if you have more stuff you want to talk about or things that you heard that were interesting, visit us on our Facebook page. Do a search for the Cine-Files. You can subscribe to the show on iTunes and Stitcher and Spotify, a whole bunch of other places. You can subscribe on YouTube, where we'd love to see your comments. Leave your reviews on iTunes. Support us on patreon.com/thecine-files. Get the numbers up to $2,500, and we'll be doing some Marvel Cinematic Universe movies. And as always, you can reach me on Twitter at SRMorris, on Instagram at SRMorris1. And John, where can they reach you?
You can always reach me at The Roca Says on Twitter and on Instagram. And as I want to plug all my stuff, the top 10, if you haven't listened to that, go find that. The top 10, Matt Nost and I. The Geek Buddies with Shannon. Hey, that's right. With Shannon McClung and Michael Vogel. Go find that on wherever you stream podcasts. Trust me, that's a great show. And then Collider Conversations, I do the deep cut. It's Collider Conversations is the name of the podcast feed, and you see my episodes on there, the deep cut. Really starting to turn the corner on the show and getting some great guests in who speak about the world of entertainment and explore their personal experiences. And yeah, some of it gets real vulnerable and honest, and that's why it's called the deep cut. So please give that show some love as well.
All right, and I think that is it for our 150th episode. We'll be back with another 150 over the next 3 years.